kind. Welcome to Winterviews Series 2, Episode 2. I am your host, Catherine Silva, Cat for short, and today we have Stephen Cords here to talk about werewolf horror. Stephen, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I am doing well too. I may have had a little bit too much pizza for dinner, and that is feeling
Hey,
it.
as problems go, that's not a bad one.
I'm feeling it. Uh,
Yeah.
but otherwise, can't complain. Um, we have a very exciting program for everybody tonight. Werewolves are just such an awesome, fun topic to discuss. Uh,
hmm
and we did not cover this subgenre last series, so it's a pleasure to get into the nitty gritty now. So I guess I would like to start today by having you tell the audience just a little bit about yourself in the
Okay.
writing industry.
Well, not a real lot to tell. I've been writing since I was in junior high. Um, Always been a horror fan, which was kind of an interesting set of circumstances when I was in school because I went to a Catholic school
Hmm.
um, and actually had nuns breaking yardsticks over my back
Oh,
because oh yeah, no, it was a fun time.
God.
Um, best story there is one of the nuns actually did break a yardstick. When she was hitting me for I think the report I wrote on Darwin, and I actually found a new yardstick for her that was in a um, like a macrame sheath. It was designed to hang from the chalkboard, but she carried it around like it was a samurai
Oh,
sword for the rest of the
jeez.
year, which was it was hilarious just to see this 6 foot 2 inch 280 pound nun walking around with her
Yikes.
hand resting on the top of a yardstick through her belt, and I was not popular that year
Uh,
because I replaced it, and all the other
yeah,
kids hated me.
I would say that is a new genre of horror right there
Yeah,
that you could
penguin
create.
horror.
God, yikes.
So yeah, I started off reading Stephen King like so many of us. Actually, at that same school, we had one lay teacher, Mrs. Bates, and she was reading The Dead Zone
Hmm.
when I was in her class. And every day she would just tell us what she had read the night before. And I was just hooked. Just John Smith. Excuse me, John Smith just sounded like such an amazing character. And that summer, my mother and I used to go yard sale hunting all the time. And over the course of that summer, we stopped at a yard sale, and this woman had just a huge stack of Stephen King paperbacks
Hmm.
for like 25 cents each. And I
Nice.
think I spent $5. I just came home with this huge stack and read them in order, and it was that was just a great summer.
That's awesome. Hmm.
And
25
then
cents a pop.
I rode through college and tried to get a few things published here and there, and was tremendously unsuccessful, spectacularly unsuccessful through that entire time. Uh, then I actually met Christopher Golden and Jim Moore, and they were teaching classes in Haverhill, Massachusetts, and I signed up for that, and learned so much. They were incredible, and after I took those classes, I got right back into it. And do you know Eleanor Mary by any chance?
I
Does the
do
name sound
not.
familiar?
No.
She is a very talented writer and editor who lives up in Canada, and we just like bumped into each other in a Facebook group somewhere, and hit it off. And she was putting together an anthology, and it was something I'd never heard of before. It was Drabbles, which are
Yeah.
the shortest flash fiction, 100-word stories, and the idea just set off this alarm in my head. I was like, I can do that. And I had always written very long stories up until that point, so I was like, I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to try this, and that forced me to be as brief and succinct as possible. And it was just really, good training. It was just something that was a lot of fun. And she actually published, a few of them in a couple of volumes. And it's just been, getting a little bit better, a little bit easier since then. I've got a really phenomenal writing group that meets once a month, and we critique each other, and the folks in that group are just so amazingly talented that just being in a room with them makes me a better writer, and I love that.
That's cool.
John Buja is one of the group.
I love John.
I love John.
John was on last season.
Yeah. And just Terry, Larry, all everybody in that group is just phenomenal. And the thing that I love the most is they really do offer a good critique. They're not afraid of saying, all right, this isn't bad, but this part, and this part really suck. And that these need to be fixed. And that is exactly, every group should have that kind of dynamic.
Oh yeah. I agree.
I was actually on a panel at Nikon where
cool.
I brought up this group, and about 10 or 15 people came up to me after the panel, were just like, is your group accepting new members? And everybody wanted to join the Monday night group, which was very flattering. But these guys have taught me so much, and I hope I've offered them a little something in return. But it's just
sure
the community is the best in the world. When I talk to my friends and family members who are not into horror at all, they'll just look at me like, aren't these people really weird? I'm like, no, they are the nicest, best educated, most giving, caring people I've ever met in my entire life.
It's like the horror community as a whole has just been really uplifting and influential and lovely since I kind of jumped in. And I just I'm pretty happy that most of the people that I interact with on a daily basis are just kind and generous, and it's a pretty awesome community to be a part of. So, werewolves, the topic at hand. What is it about werewolves that really excites you and makes you want to write about them?
This is going to sound incredibly stupid, and
there's no stupid answer.
Oh no, but there are stupid guests. I almost hope my brother is sitting watching this, because he's going to remember this. Who here remembers the Scholastic book fairs?
Oh, I do. I so do. Yeah.
Okay. There was a Scholastic book fair that I was, I saved up all year and went in and There were a collection of books that were just about, horror legends and the mythologies, and real horror, and that was just amazing to me. It's like, these aren't stories; these are, this is the truth. Yeah, they were legends and myths and things like that. But when you're, 8, 9 years old, that's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a big section about werewolves in there. And this is one thing I just want to go on record. Alma Katsu, if anybody here knows her, interacts with her, if Alma, if you're watching this at any point, she wrote technically it's a short story, but it's, novelette length, that came out earlier last year, January.
I know exactly which one you mean.
Just called Werewolf.
Yeah.
And it is the only reference I have seen since I was 8 years old to the German werewolf belt. And, that was a huge factor. That was a big thing in this book that I read. And, it's just, I've been wondering since I was, that many years old, why doesn't anybody write a story of, about, the belt? It just makes perfect sense. And then she did. And I was so happy. But, werewolves, the idea of changing, and I actually designed a T-shirt that I haven't actually had printed yet, that just says werewolves are people too, and then in parentheses, most of the time. And
that's awesome.
It's basically, the supernatural version of a superhero, because they have their mannered daily personas where they're just normal, and then, a couple of nights a month they just, completely wig out, and that's the fun time. And now, and as I've gotten older, I just really appreciate the possibilities of, the werewolf transformation being interpreted in different ways. Like, growth, maturity. Like in, well, I know we're going to be talking about movies and things, but just in preparation for this, a few days ago, I just posted on my Facebook page. It was like, okay, just asking the room, what's your favorite werewolf movie? What's your favorite werewolf book? What's your favorite werewolf short story? And there were so many people who replied that Ginger Snaps was one of their favorite werewolf movies.
Yeah.
And that movie in particular operates on so many levels. You can just really, that's one of those ones that you can sit down and you can really analyze and pick apart, and talk about different references for hours and days, and still not even reach the bottom of it. And any kind of creature that can spawn that type of discussion is just fascinating for me. And I'm actually working on a werewolf. I don't know if to call it a novel or a series of novellas, but it's based on a Scottish legend, which I find absolutely fascinating. They're called Wulvers, Wulvers, over in Scotland. And if you're not familiar with the legend, they're not actually feared. They're actually respected and liked, because Wulvers are very philanthropic. There are hundreds of stories of large hairy men with wolf's heads, of all things going fishing. And yeah, I know it's weird, but they go fishing at night, and they catch enough food for themselves and their family, and then anything that's left over, they would actually go into villages and find the homes of people who were in need, who were sick, who had a father that left, and they would actually leave fish on the windowsills and on the doorsteps for those families.
So they are basically Santa Wulvers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's cool.
And that just like sparked an idea in my head when I found that. And so the book that I'm working on right now starts off in Scotland, and then the Wulver family actually moves to the United States during the Civil War.
Okay.
And the father and his two sons enlist in the Union Army, and hilarity ensues. But the whole thing, to me, the experience of being an immigrant, and going to war as a werewolf, the werewolf actually is, in my mind, come to represent the immigrant experience, because in Scotland they're revered, respected, loved. They come to the United States and they're monsters, and they are in league with Satan, and all of this puritanical bullshit. And they have to learn to deal with that, because that's the new mentality of the land that they are now calling their own. And that's just something that fascinates me, where you can take that kind of a fixture of a community and transplant it, and then it becomes horrible. But it's not horrible, it's just perceived that way.
Yeah. That's a really cool, unique take on a werewolf story, too. That's really cool. I'm very excited about that. How far along are you in your work on the book?
The original concept, when I was just kind of fleshing it out, was to put together 7 novellas, each with a different take on the characters, with the first 6 being growing up in Scotland, moving to the United States, going to war, coming home, and then the seventh volume is a weird western that
Okay.
I'm having a ball with. The Wulvers get basically called out west to deal with a Lovecraftian type beast.
Ooh.
That is, this one is really fun, and it's based on there were towns out west that were the first truly integrated towns after the Civil War. And there were Southern loyalists who would ride into town and shoot up the place and do a bunch of horrible things. And that's the basis for this story, is that we're just replacing the racist assholes with tentacle monsters that live under the ground.
Nice.
But it's that was really fun. And then the middle volume, this is one I just started working on that I absolutely am loving. Book 4 is the most horror novel horror section of this work.
Okay.
Because it's the book 4 is told from the perspective of the Confederate soldiers.
Okay.
And the werewolves stalking them through the course of one night. And it's a father and his 2 sons, and considering another character or two that are going to be kind of a surprise. I'm waiting. It's strange. I'm waiting for permission because
I gotcha.
I incorporate like a lot of names and representations of my friends in my work,
Gotcha.
and I always ask permission.
Gotcha.
That's okay. Here's what I want to do, and I want to use your name, and I'm going to base this on you, but I want to make sure you're okay with that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and throw out a spoiler alert here. The leader of the Wulver clan back in Scotland is based on the most Scottish man I know, Bracken MacLeod.
Gotcha.
Do you know Bracken?
I have not officially met Bracken.
Okay.
I was at Merrimack this year, and I know he was there, and I didn't get a chance to really meet him there, but...
Bracken is one of the most incredible men I know. I'm just going to go all fanboy for a moment. I have... my sons and I joke about it because no one looks more like their name than Bracken MacLeod. You know, strong, buff dude, shaved head, big beard. He looks like he should be wearing a kilt and carrying a broadsword at all times. And that's exactly what I wanted. The appearance of the leader of the Wulver tribe to be. And so I reached out to him, and God bless him. He said, "Yeah, go ahead, go for it."
Nice.
And that's that. He is a pivotal character,
That's
in
awesome.
there. And I love the fact that he said yes. And then I've got a couple of other people that I'm waiting to hear back from, who are actually minor celebrities that I don't want to incorporate into the book until I get actual legal permission.
Yep. Makes sense, and is totally a smart way to go about it.
Yeah. One of them has actually come out and said in public in interviews and things that he aspires to be even an extra or a bit player in some Western movie.
Oh.
I was like, all right, you're going to be an 8-foot redheaded werewolf. How's that sound?
Nice.
But
have you thought about how you're going to publish it? If you're going to go the self-publishing route, or if you're going to try and find an indie press for it, or go for the traditional 5?
Ideally, I would like to get. I don't even consider, anything that I work on good enough for one of the big 5. I don't expect to get on their radar for a long time. There are a couple of small presses that I would absolutely love to work with, and I'm not going to mention any of their names or anything because I don't want to.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be that guy.
No, I understand.
But I have some friends who are editors and owners of some small presses, and it's funny because you and I were chatting earlier about Tom Dede, and he's one of the members of that Monday Night Writers group. And
he is nice.
He is such an invaluable resource. He has given me so many great suggestions and methods to get on the radar, of some of the people that I want to work with, and hopefully, the next time we talk, I'll be able to say something, because there's something I've got possibly maybe in the works that could be happening.
Gotcha.
But
cool.
It's sitting on the desk right now.
Yes. Yep. Well, hopefully, fingers crossed, And anybody that's watching the video, get on this because it's going to be awesome and you might miss out. You should be involved. It
Yeah,
sounds
this,
very
this one
cool.
is fun. It's a story about a serial killer who's trying to go through a 12-step program and he keeps failing.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, it's actually titled "That Ninth Step is the ninth step of it is a bitch," and
That sounds good too.
it's kind of a you know happy-go-lucky serial killer story.
Gotcha. Huh. Um, Back to werewolves.
Yeah.
We did talk. So you talked a little bit about werewolves as symbolism,
Hmm.
and I did want to just kind of go back to that. Um, a lot of times, werewolves have been symbolized as a connection to your baser instincts, to getting in
Yep.
touch with your inner animal, and a more primal connection to nature. Um,
Very much so. Yep.
and uh, how I know, and your werewolves are definitely more on the uh, more heroic, less
Hmm.
terrible route.
Unless you're a Confederate soldier,
Unless you're a
yeah.
Confederate soldier, where would you say your symbolism uh, lies with your werewolves? I know you did talk about
Yeah,
them
the
as
immigrant
immigrants
experience.
as
Yeah.
well. So maybe a little bit more about how you sort of came to that idea for your book.
Hmm. Um, well, the whole idea for the book actually it started off about a year and a half ago. I just had this, what I thought was a pretty cool idea about it was another you know way to use the symbolism of the werewolf, um, or more so just like you know a quote unquote monster versus a regular mortal human. Um, I started working on a story where a man, just a regular dude, actually got married to a woman that he knew was a werewolf, and they had a child, and the child is growing up, and after a while, the differences in their culture, because she is you know very savage once a month, and leans into her more animalistic behaviors, um, has gotten unsettling for him.
Mm.
Uh, so he was, basically getting to the point where he's just, thinking, maybe a normal woman would be a better match for me. This is after like 12, 13 years of marriage.
Yeah.
And, I've seen friends who, I have had acquaintances who have grown apart, and the things that really attracted them to their mates when they were younger now are a trial. It's something they actually put up with just to stay together. And I was like, that would be kind of an interesting thing to explore, you know, to the you know 25th level,
Yeah.
and it I had I thought was a pretty decent story put together about a year and a half ago, and the writers group, um, the ones who read it, mostly liked it. There were a couple of things that we were going to edit, but um, it was very strange because at the point where I was getting that just about finished, I actually suffered a bit of a medical issue,
Mm.
and um, couldn't, physically could not focus enough to write for a considerable amount of time.
Gotcha.
And then when I sat down, it was like, okay, I remember there were werewolves. They were married. No, they weren't werewolves. One was a werewolf, and I actually had to go back and try to find it and reread
Yeah.
it, and then I was just at that point I was just like, I can't even do this.
Yeah.
I couldn't write that story anymore, and that's when I sat down. I was like, okay, well, I still freaking love werewolves. So, hey Google, tell me some international werewolf legends.
Hmm.
Oh,
Sorry,
Scotland's
I
got a
don't
cool
understand,
one, and
but I found something similar. Do you want to know what is the oldest werewolf legend?
No.
yes,
On the website theconversation.com, they say the earliest surviving example of man-to-wolf transformation is found in the Epic of Gilgamesh from around 2100 BC. However, the werewolf as we now know it first appeared in ancient Greece and Rome in ethnographic, poetic, and philosophical texts.
Thanks.
yeah. Well, that was interesting.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
I sometimes forget that that's there. I don't use that very often.
Well, I love it when my phone does that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's I mean,
Excuse
when we used to have the Amazon one plugged in,
me.
that would go off all the time. And it got to a point where it just drove me crazy. So we unplugged that, and then we got
Yep.
one of these, and it sometimes it goes off. It'll hear something, that
Like me.
yes, a sound, something that sounds like Google, and it will just perk up. But so now everybody knows.
How many people in the audience now are thinking, yeah, that would be a good story?
Well, that's I think that's already kind of a story.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I think The Thing Between Us is the name of the book, about a possessed Amazon speaker or something like that. But of course, everybody could come up with a different
Yeah.
variation on it, I'm sure.
I'm sure in the future, digital assistants are going to be, werewolves and completely up for interpretation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna refer to my list so I don't lose track of where I am. So we're talking about werewolves as symbolism, and then we've sort of segued into history of werewolves, which the
Thank you,
magical assistant in the background helped
Yep.
with. And I was going to ask which werewolf folktales have inspired you, but we clearly know which one is sort of at the top of your
hmm
list right now. Were there any others that you had heard of or found that you were kind of thinking that you wanted to do something with?
Not so much as far as writing goes, but one thing I was going to mention after I got that Scholastic Book Fair little collection of legends and things. This is one of those moments that if my brother ever does see this, he's just going to have to pause because he's going to laugh so hard. But there was a reference in there at one point where it was saying, how to find out if you're a werewolf. And there were all of these things that that supposedly indicated lycanthropy, and one of them was if your eyebrows grow together, you could be a werewolf. And I remember like reading that, putting the book down, going into the bathroom, and I had to get up to the mirror over the sink, and I was just standing there doing these, And my brother came into the room and was just like, "What the hell are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, nothing. I just read something." And, never mind. It's nothing. He's like, and he wouldn't let it go. So then I told him, and he was just like, "So you think you're a werewolf?" And I'm like, "No, I hope not. Maybe, but no, no." And to this day, you know, 40 years later, he's still every once in a while. So, you ever change under the full moon? It's like, no, Mike, fuck you. You know? But you know, stupid kid stuff. But it's one of those fun things that I guess mentioned in wedding toasts and things. So
It's pretty excellent.
yeah,
And, you found out that you were not a werewolf at the time.
we're hoping. Yeah.
Yeah. So, at the time, there's still time to
Yep.
become a werewolf.
Let's hope.
So, man, we've kind of covered all the topics that I was kind of thinking about bringing up, because the next one was werewolves as characters, monsters or heroes, and yours they're kind of balancing as both. Like you definitely have them as the heroes of the piece,
Yep,
but you've got
got
that
very much heroic intentions.
yeah, but then you've also got that, the Confederate side, they are definitely monsters. So I guess my next question is going to be, do you like writing them as heroes more than writing them as villains?
I do. I'm one of those people. Like one of the biggest points as far as my reading goes, one of those big aha Gestaltian moments was when I read Cabal by Clive Barker.
Oh,
Because that's the story of Midian, where the monsters live, and that just took everything that people would think about with monsters and turned it on its ass. Because in that one, the monsters were, even if they weren't the heroes, they were the sympathetic characters. They were they were the characters. They had real depth and a broad range of emotions, and it was just incredible to read something like that, because I couldn't tell you if it's been done before, but I know it's never been done better than that. And then later on they decided to make a movie called Nightbreed, which was based on that.
Oh, okay.
And I was absolutely blown away, because the again, spoiler alert, if you have not seen Breed, you probably want to, like, I'll wave when I'm done.
Yeah, Mom. Okay. If you haven't seen Nightbreed,
Yeah. But the psychiatrist who is treating Boone, the lead character, is the real monster. He's a serial killer who goes after families, and he is one of the most horrible things on this planet. And the monsters basically save the world from this guy, and it's I just love the juxtaposition that Barker reached with that, where are they, well, I can't even say they were ugly, because the monsters in that movie were mostly gorgeous. They were very well done, and just like Clive Barker is famous for, they were sexy. There were some good-looking beasties in that movie. But okay, I'm waving. You can come back now.
One of the things that I do regret is that I have not read any Clive Barker yet.
Oh,
And a
I'm
friend
actually kind of jealous.
a friend is supposed to let me borrow his copy of basically it's Pinhead. It's the wow, my
The Hellbound Heart.
brain. Thank you. My
Yeah.
brain just died right there. The Hellbound Heart,
Yep.
so that I could read it. And I got him into reading horror. This is what I'm really proud of. He had not
That's awesome.
read, he didn't read, and then I got him to read my book, and now he has
Hmm.
started to read horror. And so he started
That's
to read
great.
Clive Barker, and I was just
I
like
love that.
so proud. Um, but
One
Hunter,
of
if
my
you're
sons,
watching,
I've got my wife and I have twin boys. They just turned 20 a little bit ago. And Xander, and yes, he's named after the character Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
yes,
Uh, is
it's my favorite
um,
character.
he's actually in the Navy right now. He's training, doing all kinds of really high end, super cool, top secret things that I can't talk about. But it was so funny because um, my sons have gone to Nikon with me for multiple years, and they just absolutely love the horror community. And Xander, especially, he just fell into reading, like everything he could get his hands on. And it was really funny because I mentioned Chris Golden a little while ago.
Yeah.
Um, he put out a series of books starting with Ararat, which were based around a character. And again, my brain is Swiss cheese now. I believe it was character Ben Walker. The Walker novels, there are three of them. And Xander took my copy of Ararat and read it, and he was like, that was freaking excellent. I'm like, yeah, it's a really, really good book. He's like, that thing with the down the side of the mountain, and again, spoiler alert, but yeah, he just absolutely fell in love with it. And at that point, I was like, oh well, you should know there's a new book coming out, and it's going to be the next chapter. It's called The Pandora Room. And he was just like, really? You already pre-ordered it? I'm like, yeah. When's it coming out? I'm like, you're asking an awful lot of high-pitched questions, boy. What's going on? He's just, I was just curious. If I log on to Amazon, am I going to see when it's coming? I'm like, yeah. And he raced me to the mailbox that day and
That's
stole
so
it.
funny. Oh.
Yeah. And then he did the same thing with the third book. And now, anytime Chris has got a new book coming out, he would, when he was still living here, he would just like be perched by the mailbox, just like
Nice.
waiting for the mail person. Oh, here comes the lady in the white truck now. Thank you. And I wouldn't see him for 2 or 3 days. And then he'd just walk by, drop the book on my desk, go, yeah, you need to read that, Dad.
That's awesome.
And just in case anybody was unaware, Chris has got a new book coming out on Tuesday. It's called All Hallows.
Yes, he does.
Xander, I already ordered you a copy. It's going to be arriving on Tuesday.
Gets his own.
Yep. Oh, yeah, he's got his own library. He's got this addiction to those like Barnes and Noble leather-bound edition books.
Yeah.
He's got Moby Dick, a collection of H.P. Lovecraft. Just if he hadn't been with the same girl, had the same girlfriend since like his sophomore year of high school, I would think he was just buying them to impress women, because he's just got this one bookshelf that's just lined with these leather,
Yes.
bound editions.
Look at my many leather-bound books.
Yes, and I could see him using that as a pickup line, because that's the kind of circles we travel. If you don't read, you probably will not last long in their circle.
Yeah, that's so funny. It's like, Well, I just have this horrible problem of just buying books and then being the slowest reader on the planet. So, yeah. They just like I have Road of Bones and I have not read it yet. Um
That's
and
it,
I'm
it, it's strange because I pre-ordered that, and I read it as soon as I got it, and it for some reason it's just been gaining a huge amount of traction lately.
well, it came out in paperback. That's
Yeah.
the big thing I think. And it's a winter book too, so
Right. Well, that's the thing with Chris. I'm every time I pick up his book, one of his books, I'm like, oh, this is heavy and cold, because every one of them, like the past, maybe 6 or 8 books, um, they're all set in, the coldest place in Russia, or on the side of Mount Ararat, or it's just everything is freezing cold, and I'm just like, okay, yeah,
and they all come
you've,
out
you've
in like
found your niche.
January too.
Yeah, yeah.
Um
I don't think All Hallows is going to be that frigid, but
no, I think it isn't it Halloween.
I know.
Isn't that kind of
Yeah, I
the
think so.
yeah.
Yeah, I've been purposefully avoiding, anything. I haven't even read reviews. I already knew, like, I love the man. I love his work. I will love this book.
Mhm.
It's just understood. It's just going to happen that way.
Yep.
And so I'm walking into this as blind as I possibly can.
Well, he needs to write a werewolf book so that
Yes.
we can further talk about that. Uh, I'm going to
Trying to remember
redirect
the.
us back to the topic at
Oh,
hand
okay.
because we're coming up on our sort of end here.
Yeah.
And we'll move to the wrap up questions,
Mhm.
which are favorite werewolf media, your favorite films, television shows, games, books. Got a
I
list.
have my list.
All right.
All right. So, uh, as far as novels go, number one on the list for a long time, because this is again one of the ones that I found at a yard sale when I was like 12 years old. Robert McCammon's Wolf's Hour, and that I think was somewhere squirreled in the back of my brain when I came up with this Wulvers idea, because that's a story of a werewolf, fighting in World War II, and it's absolutely amazing, because well, it's Robert McCammon, um, and that's one of those things where it's always been one of my favorite books, period, not just werewolf books. Um, and then I posed that question on Facebook earlier, and like at least half of the people posted that Robert McCammon's Wolf's Hour was one of their favorites.
Nice.
And it's funny because Ron Kelly, uh, I hate ranking things because they just operate on different levels for me. But his book Undertaker's Moon is amazing, and it's got some of the same themes that I'm trying to incorporate into my book. Very prevalent in there, because it's a group of Irish werewolves who moved to the southern part of the United States. But they're not heroes. There's nothing really heroic about this clan. But that is also an absolutely amazing book. One of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
So there are the novels,
Awesome.
and then we're going to go to movies, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And this one was the easiest by far. Dog Soldiers.
I had a feeling that might come up. Have you read Janine Pipe's book about dog soldiers?
I have it around here somewhere, but I haven't actually opened it yet.
Okay.
But
I've heard
I'm looking
extremely
forward to it.
good things.
Yeah. And and then of course, the only horror movie my wife will watch, American Werewolf in London,
Oh.
because it's riddled with so much humor
It,
that she can take, you know. No, I'm sorry I called you a meatloaf, Jack. No, that's. Uh, I love. I watch her more than I watch the movie when we will watch it now, because, like I'll have a stack of movies. I'll be like, hey, hon, can we watch a couple of these for Halloween? And she'll just be like, American Werewolf in there? Yeah, it's like the third or fourth one down because we've seen it every year since we've known each other, and yeah, I'll just put it on top.
that's a negotiating piece now.
Yeah. No, there is no peace.
Oh.
But yeah, it is a marriage. That's a joke. That's a joke. But yeah, that's just axiomatic. That's the scary movie that she will watch. So that's the only one we watch. Oh, and I'm upset with myself right now because I specifically wrote it down. Going back to, and I don't know if I can actually include this as a werewolf story because it's not a werewolf story. But my top read, my number one read for 2022 is a cute little book by a young lady named Candace Nola.
Yeah.
Called
And Bishop.
Bishop.
Yeah.
I
have that.
After I got home from my away time in the hospital, I was just like flipping around on my phone, and I was just like, I haven't bought a book in months, and I just like flipping through Amazon, and I saw that cover.
It's an awesome
And the
cover.
It just knocked me on my ass. I was just like, okay, and I started flipping through it, and I read a little bit of the description, and spoiler alert, it's not really a spoiler because it's very evident just from the cover, but it's a story of a werebear. And the stuff that she does with that. And there's another character. Well, I don't even know if it's a character, but there's another creature in there, which is the first really accurate depiction of a Wendigo that I've read.
Gotcha.
If you read the actual Native American legends, Candace absolutely nails it. And if you go up to Amazon and you're looking at this book, flip through until you see the review from Kimberly Cords, because my wife and I share an Amazon account, and she's the one that's logged in all the time. So anytime I write a review,
It's under her name.
it's under Kimberly's name.
Gotcha.
But hands down, by far, my favorite novel of 2022. That was like so amazing.
That's pretty awesome.
Yep.
I have it. I got it from Candace to read, and
Yep.
I have not read it yet. And I'm kicking myself because I have so many really awesome books to read like that, and I
Yep.
just need to finish the 3 that I have going right now.
Right. And if I may just, again, I'm just going to turn slightly askew here. Do you know the name Bridget Nelson?
I do.
You do. All right. I just want to put it out there because this was the status I put out just before I logged into this conversation. She had posted that her sales ranking is just like a fingernail's length under what she needs to actually become an active member in the HWA.
Oh.
So, and she's got this collection of short stories out that is absolutely amazing. You know, and I joke with her about this, but this is the truth. I have 3 copies of this book. Okay. I bought, it's called A Bouquet of Viscera, which just from the title is absolutely amazing. And I saw the image of the cover by Lynn Hansen,
Yep.
who did the cover, and she is absolutely amazing. And I was just like, okay, yes, I need this in my life. This has to be on my shelf. And I ordered the paperback. And, you know, I love the book so much. You know, I was raving about it. And my wife actually reached out to Bridget and bought a copy of the hardcover and had it signed, which
Nice.
was like one of my favorite Christmas presents this year. So thank you, honey. And then the Kindle version went on sale for like, you know, $1 or $3 or something like that a little while ago. And I was just like, you know, if I have that, I can access it anywhere, anytime.
That
so I bought
is,
it. So
yeah, that's how you
I
know
have
that
3
somebody
copies
loves
of
your
this
book.
But and you know, unfortunately, that is enough. That's the. I now have it in every form in which it exists. But if anybody out there doesn't have it yet, please pop up to Amazon. Bridget Nelson, no E at the end of Bridget. Nelson spelled in the conventional manner. Bouquet of Viscera. Find it, buy it, read it, love it, review it, and get this girl into the HWA so she can vote on stuff.
And I will say it's Bouquet of Viscera, not of the Sarah, which is what it's coming up as on the.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's coming up as Bouquet of the Sarah on the closed captioning. So, just for clarification purposes, if you are interested in getting that book.
Or if you're a friend of mine, I have I have that post on my Facebook timeline, and there's a link to the hardcover in the comments. And again, Lynn Hansen, artist extraordinaire, you know, absolutely phenomenal. Every cover she's ever done, I want as a poster. And
Yeah.
you know, and she did this cover. It is absolutely amazing.
I was gonna say I was fortunate enough to have a table across from Lynn and Jeff at AuthorCon last year, and
really?
I bought a poster version of one of Jeff's books, and it's pretty awesome. And yeah, just stunning
They're
artwork.
just amazing people. Kim actually got me a couple of T-shirts from Lynn for
Nice.
Christmas as well. And you know, it's strange because the place where I work, we have like no dress code. You know, you can just T-shirt, jeans, whatever you want. It's, you know, it's a very relaxed atmosphere. And the people in the office always come up to me, you know, every day and look at my shirts like, it's a skull made out of bats. That's neat. And, you know, like, okay, yep, LynnHansen.com.
Yep, get yours there.
Yep. God, I feel like I'm doing an infomercial now.
Yeah, I mean, you're plugging a lot of really awesome books, which is great.
Yeah.
Did you have any other werewolf books or films or TV or anything else
Well,
that you...
I just happen to have a copy of Mongrels here
Yeah.
by Stephen Graham Jones. You may have heard of him, you may have not, but
Yeah.
yeah, he's it's strange because I there are certain books when I read about them, it's just like, okay, I need a hardcover version of that. And this thing was almost impossible to find in hardcover. And here in my hometown, I've got a little local bookstore called Toadstool Books.
Oh yeah.
And
Wait, where are you?
in New Hampshire,
In Keene, or in
near Keene.
Okay.
I'm Keene adjacent.
I was gonna say because I've been to the Keene bookstore, to that
Yeah.
Keene bookstore. It's an awesome bookstore.
And the used section is amazing. And Jeff, the guy who runs the used section down, I'm actually in the closer to the Peterborough
Okay.
station. Actually found this copy for me in hardcover. The dust jacket was kind of eviscerated. It was pretty well destroyed. But I've got the the really cool hardcover. And that's one of those ones that when I put out the question, what are your favorite werewolf everything, it was like Robert McCammon, Wolf's Hour, just barely beat out Mongrels. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited to start that. I just have to finish up a couple of other things first.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Mongrels is
Yeah.
one that when I go to Barnes and Noble, I see it and I'm like, I'm gonna pick that up soon.
Yeah.
When I'm not encumbered by hundreds of books. But I know it's probably going to end up in my to be read pile soon.
Yeah.
And my second question in the wrap up series is do you enjoy writing werewolf horror over other kinds of horror?
I do, but it's strange. Like I've been working on the the Wulvers, story collection series, whatever, for maybe about 6, 7 months, and it's one of those things where it's like, okay, because it's set up in several different volumes. It's like, okay, I feel like writing some real horror today, so let's kill some Confederate soldiers, and I'll pull out book 5 and all that. But after, every once in a while, it's just like, okay, you know what? I'm tired of the fuzzy guys, just for a little while. So that's one of the things I wrote this story for the submission that Tom recommended to me. It's about a serial killer who's. Did we talk about that
Yes. Yep.
already? Okay. Yeah.
We did.
Again, Swiss cheese brain.
That's okay. No worries.
But that was just a really fun little like side trip, and now I'm back on the Wulver main line.
Nice. Nice.
But every once in a while, you just have to like stop and look at something else for a little while.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. So we have reached the end of our hour.
Okay.
But thank you so much for coming
You're
on.
welcome.
And it was
Silver Heart by Morgan Sylvia.
I
It's in the Wicked Women compilation from the New England Horror Writers.
don't have that one actually, surprisingly.
You should.
I should, yeah.
Yeah. There's so much amazing stuff in
But
there.
I also really dig Morgan. She's one of my,
Yeah.
local Mainer friends.
Yep.
And I read Abode by her last year, and I
Yep.
read it in a day, and that is a
Really?
thick book.
Yeah.
It killed my eyes, but I read it in a day, and it was
Yeah.
awesome.
It's a freaking masterpiece. I
Yeah.
love that one.
So yeah, I can definitely say, Morgan's writing is top notch for sure.
Yeah.
So, before we end the program, do you have any websites or blogs or places where people can sort of keep up with you as you work on your book, where they can sort of follow along with updates or anything?
I'm not really much of a social media guy. Just to give you an idea, I just recently, and I'm talking like in the past couple of weeks, created a Twitter profile. I've never tweeted.
I followed you today,
Oh,
actually.
really?
Yes.
Yeah. And the only reason I did that was because a friend sent me a message and told me that Jonathan Jans mentioned me for something because
Oh,
um, yeah I this is kind of a little fun thing. I collect fountain pens. I'm a huge fountain pen freak,
that's awesome.
and there are some that are made in China that are very reasonably priced, and I will pick up what I'm buying and usually if you buy more than one through this website you get free shipping.
Hmm.
So I'm just like, okay, free shipping from China, and it's like a $6 pen. Yeah, I'll buy two of them, and I keep a little wallet with the extras,
Hmm.
and I've got one pen. I've got this one. It's called a Gin House 750. Um, it looks and feels like a very high end pen, but it's like $6.
Hmm.
It's really reasonable. And I've just got this one. It's all steel. It's pretty heavy, um, with a medium nib, so it's just under half a millimeter nib, and it writes super smooth, and
Hmm.
it feels like poetry in your hand. And it's this is the pen that I carry with me to signings and conventions and things.
Nice.
Um, Joe Lansdale has signed a bunch of books using this pen.
Nice.
Chris Golden has used it. Jim Moore, Bracken. I take it out everywhere, and I had never met Jonathan Jans before, and I met him at Merrimack, and it was funny because he was sitting next to the place that Josh Malerman was going to be seated,
Yep.
and I was just like, oh, and it's funny because I specifically went up to him saying, "Do you have a copy of your werewolf book?" And he did, and I was like, "Okay, great." And
Nice.
I took out the like my favorite pen, and I was like, it's going to sound stupid, but a lot of really talented writers have used this pen to inscribe books to me. Would you mind joining their ranks? Please use this pen. And he started. He was like, "Oh, sure, yeah." And he took it. He started writing. He's just like, "Oh God." And he said a couple of things that I'm not going to repeat right now because they're a little racy for non primetime
Yeah.
TV. And but I'll just say he enjoyed the experience
Hmm.
of writing with that pen. And at that point, I was like, oh well, if you want. And I took out the wallet that I have, like I carry around with me, and I was like, if you want, these are, I collect fountain pens. I've got a bunch of duplicates. I've got these. If you'd like one, feel free to help yourself. And he just kind of paused. He was just like, oh no, I couldn't. And he's just like looking in the wallet.
Hmm.
Uh, you're sure? You just want to give away a pen? I'm like, yeah, if you see something you like, and he just reaches it. He's just like, that one's got a dragon on it. And I was like, yeah. And I took it out. I inked it up for him because I also carry a bottle of ink with me, and I hand it to him, and he starts writing with it. He's just like, oh my god, this is amazing, this is great. And then he holds it up and he starts laughing. And I'm like, well, what's so funny? He's just like, one of my kids just discovered Harry Potter.
Nice.
This is a Slytherin pen. I was just like, okay, yeah, you're going to be the cool dad. He's like, I'm always the cool dad, but yeah, this is going to make me even cooler.
That's
And
awesome.
Oh no! Well, the really funny bit was, he thanked me profusely. He was just like, such another one, just
Yeah.
another
Really
legend in
nice.
the horror community that is just a beautiful human being. Just a wonderful guy. And then Josh sat down at his table, and there's a little story about one of Josh's books when I was recovering. Um, and I had mentioned, he and I were friends on Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
and I mentioned, what his book Goblin meant to me when I was recovering, and I asked him to sign that book, and I handed him my 750 pen, and he starts writing with. He's like, I haven't used a fountain pen in years. This is oh wow, this is great. And I'm like, oh well, and I took out the wallet. I'm like,
Yep.
if you like, do you want one? And Jan's just like kind of snuck over. He's just like, oh, you're looking in the pen wallet, huh? You gonna take one of Steve's pens? And he had found one, and it was really kind of cool one, also by Jin Hao, with a light blue finish, and it almost looks like clouds on it.
Mm.
And he's just like, yeah, this is really nice. Thank you so much. And and Jonathan reaches in, and he goes, oh, that's fine. Mine has dragons on it. Look at this. And he starts. It was just so funny
Nice.
to see him like prancing next to Josh Malin and going, oh look, my pen is cooler than yours, and and now
I totally believe it.
yeah, and that's what he tweeted about. He was just like, thanks for the amazing pen, and then he put put a picture of the pen and put my name on it, and it was just like, so cool,
Nice.
because these guys are. I don't like to use the word heroes, or I don't want to say legends or anything, but they're these incredibly talented, accomplished people, and he was so happy to get a pen, you know, and it's just I just love these guys so much. They're just wonderful people.
That they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are going to say goodnight to everybody in the chat. Thank you guys for coming out.
I'm sorry, I'm so boring.
No, you're not boring at all. You're not boring
You
at
may
all.
want to ask my wife about that one.
This episode will be going up probably this weekend or next week. So be on the lookout for it. It'll be on my YouTube channel, of which there will be links provided online. Next week, we will have our third episode, which will be Sean M. Thompson talking about crime horror. Should be a lot of fun. So look forward
I will be joining
to
you in the
that.
chat room for that one.
Yeah, I'm excited. So I'm gonna just boop right over to Facebook and stop the live video here really quick if I can figure out how to get out
Don't
of.
boop too hard. It can be
I know.
a very traumatic experience.
No, booping can be really traumatic.